Hello and welcome to After Scientology Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together and talk about the week's events regarding the Church of Scientology and its activities in the world, as reported on Tony's blog. Hey, Tony, welcome back to the show.
Hey, Chris. Good to be here, man. What's going on?
Lots. So many good things. And interesting things. This was quite a week because the Aftermath Foundation, let's go ahead and just get right into it. Lead with this. This was really breaking and stellar news early on. The Aftermath Foundation put up a billboard right outside the PAC base. Then it was taken down. What's the whole story here? You talked to Phil in detail about this. What's the skinny?
Yeah, Phil came to me and said, "Listen, I'm going to do another billboard, but it's a big secret." He actually wrote up for me a piece about, the fact that he had been approached by the Aftermath Foundation, and because he had this history. He and his wife Willie had put up 3 billboards before, and they were working with a company they'd worked with before. Clear Channel was the company they worked with for their billboard in Clearwater, Florida.
Oh.
So this was a company he knew, and they had found this amazing location, which was right there on the block with the advanced org and everything, and you could literally see it from Big Blue, which I thought was amazing.
I don't think there could have been a better location to put it.
No, there couldn't have been a better location. And what a great message! Just if you're thinking of leaving, give us a call. That's it. It's
That's right.
Very clear. I mean, the previous billboards he had done had the big words "Call me," and you had to look closer to see, to my loved one in Scientology. This was much more in your face. Just like if you're thinking of leaving, give us a call. And that was just really clean, great design. And Colonel Coleman did it the same way he did the previous ones. So he asked me to wait until the thing was actually up before saying anything. And so Monday morning, I had to wait and delay my story until I got the word from him that it was done. It was a little after 8 a.m. Monday, like last week, LA time.
Yep.
And it just looked great. And Phil told me that he talked to the rep at Clear Channel and said, you guys have been great. And the Clear Channel rep was like, "Oh, everyone here is pulling for you. This is wonderful." Well, it wasn't too much longer after that that the rep wanted to talk to him again, this time with the manager on a conference call. They actually wanted Phil to talk on a Zoom call, but he didn't want to. He was on the road. And the manager was like, "We need to find a different place." So, I mean, what does that tell you, Chris? It tells you that they were getting heat. They were getting heat from Scientology. And I've talked to people about this. What form did that heat take? I think it was just really simple. I think Scientology, some people have said, well, maybe Scientology offered to spend a lot more money, but there was definitely this fear part of it. And I think that what they probably said was something about like, "Oh, you're helping out with this religious bigotry. We're going to let everybody know that."
Yep.
And a company like that just can't. They get really nervous about their reputation. So I think it was something like that. And they suddenly realized, and what the manager said to Phil was, "We don't do controversial. We're not a news organization." And they asked if they would accept a billboard in a different location. But Phil went and checked out those locations, and they weren't anywhere near where a Scientologist Sea Org member might see them. And so they said, "No, that's not going to work for us." Ray Jeffrey, the lawyer who's on the board of the Aftermath Foundation, sent Clear Channel a letter on Wednesday saying, "Look, this is not a controversial message. If you want us to move it, we'd like your reasons in writing." And they didn't get a response. And it was that night, early Thursday morning, when the thing got pulled down.
Yep.
And the last I checked, they still hadn't heard anything from Clear Channel. Now, I think the contract they signed was for a year, but it does include verbiage about the Clear Channel could cancel at any time for whatever reason. So
I figured
there's not really a lawsuit to be done here.
Right.
I think the Aftermath Foundation is going to pivot, come up with some other ways of getting the message out. And it got a lot of publicity. So, it's just, once again, Scientology can't handle the truth and uses intimidation methods. And it's a shame to see Clear Channel cave.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's just another example of These companies, as you said, they're not on a crusade. They're there to make money, throw up some signage, help, do that kind of work, right? They're not crusaders. But, we're supposed to have principles here. Freedom of speech is one of them, the ability to get messages out and pay people to put it up there, and this was a non-controversial message. There is no one besides the Church of Scientology who would have an objection to this, which means in all of the United States, we're talking about a few thousand people out of literally hundreds of millions, right? So this is not a good choice on their part. As far as I think, I think those guys really caved so quickly. It took almost nothing. And they were probably threatened with lawsuits or something. I mean, they were, as well as the bigotry card that Scientology constantly plays. And this is the thing that I was talking about the other day on a show I was doing, where I was trying to make the point that trying to face and bring your accusers to justice or even shame them publicly, these are exactly the kind of challenges I was talking about. It's like you think you got allies, you think you're moving forward, and then the rug gets cut out from under you, whether it's on a legal, a PR, a TV show. I mean, there's so many avenues where this happens to victims. And it just sucks, And so what do? You pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you go and you do it. You figure out another avenue of attack. You figure out another avenue of approach. That's what the Aftermath board's going to do on this. I thought their response was great too. It's like, all right, yeah, well, there we go. And here we go again. But they got the PR media attention on it. And certainly we see that Scientology is not, oh yeah, we're wide open for any communication ever. We support freedom of speech. Sure you do, Scientology. Sure you do. All right. Anyway, that's my rundown on that thing. It was great. I got to say, the Aftermath Foundation was bringing it. And I really, really laud them for that. It was awesome that they pulled that off. And it's also another example of not all the work that gets done on this gets done in front of a camera. Real world work. That's where you can really make a difference. Now, in terms of also real world work, the Jane Doe lawsuit, there was a filing on this week. I understand there's a hearing coming up that's going to be pretty important. Where are we at on that?
Well, in that lawsuit, Scientology is doing its classic thing. It's trying to force the lawsuit into arbitration, and they are basing it on a 2002 contract that Jane Doe signed while she was at the Flag Land Base with Lisa Marie Presley. And she has explained that she was not there to take services. She was just staying there with her mom and with Lisa Marie. And they told her that you can't stay here without signing something. And so she felt coerced. She didn't really read it. And Scientology didn't countersign it. So there's a lot of reasons why they are bringing up that this contract is not, because so often these judges say, well, the contract's a contract. I guess you can't sue. But the other thing that I thought was really good that they're doing in this response to Scientology's motion is they're saying, look, Congress just passed an act saying that you can't force someone into arbitration over sex assault claims. And this lawsuit is about a woman who, when she was underage, was in the Sea Org, and a Sea Org recruiter was messing with her. And they basically said, listen, you either got to marry him or you're going to get kicked out. And so she felt she was coerced into marrying the guy, and any sex she had with him was non-consensual. And this was when she was underage. And so the lawsuit's all about how women, children are endangered in Scientology and how she was forced into this relationship. And so they're saying, look, this is exactly what Congress was saying. You've got these awful sexual allegations, and they're trying to sweep it under the rug with this arbitration nonsense. And it's especially bad with Scientology because in normal lawsuits that have nothing to do with Church Scientology, you may have signed an arbitration clause when you got a new roof or you got your teeth fixed or whatever. And if you have a problem with it, they're going to force you into arbitration. But it's independent arbitration. It doesn't favor either side, but it does favor the company in the fact that it's private and it's not in a court of law.
Right.
But at least you'll have a fair chance with this retired judge or whatever in independent arbitration. That's not what happens in Scientology. Not only is it out of the public eye, but it's completely stacked in Scientology's favor. And
right.
and they know it, and it's a complete joke. And these judges just can't seem to grasp that concept. So I think it's interesting that they are bringing up, though, that Congress did not want this to happen. This is what they were talking about. That'll be very interesting. That's coming up on March 26th. So just another week, and we'll get to see what happens in that case. It seems to me like a pretty smart argument on the fact Jane Doe's legal team.
Absolutely, this is a quality argument for sure, and on the surface, even, I mean, there's nothing intricate or weird or minutia like about this argument. It's very common sense. And even, I mean, dare I say, even Congress gets it, right? So, so hopefully these judges will too, because it's really the context matters. That's what the whole point of bringing these into a court of law is, so somebody can see the entire context of it, which is why these judges have been so disappointing, because they haven't. And the point you just made is so perfect about why this isn't the same as other contract law and other situations with that. So so we'll see what happens with that in the next week or two. Now, also on the legal front, and this was actually pretty significant, there was a decision made in Leah's lawsuit. Yeah.
Right. Well, this was interesting to me because we've been waiting for Judge Hammock to convert his two different tentative rulings about Scientology's anti-slaps into a final ruling. And it just was like, when is he going to I mean, is he making some big changes or something? Well, I think Wednesday, he finally put in his final ruling. And it took a while for some of us to get copies of it. One of the news services that jumped on it for the very first story was put out by Courthouse News Service. And they said, this lawsuit's been gutted. And they made it sound like Leah's lawsuit's now on life support. There's barely anything left. They quoted Corinne Powell from Scientology, crowing about what a huge victory this was for Scientology. And she was saying, and we're entitled to legal fees and we're going to file for them. Well, I got my hands on the ruling that night and I started going through it line by line, and it was almost identical to what the tentative ruling was before. And the same news service had said about the tentative ruling that it was just a trimming and that most of her lawsuit was going to be going through fine. So nothing had changed in the judge's ruling. All he added in the final were some additional, footnotes to explain some things. But all the things he said he was going to cut from her defamation claims, he had previously said he did cut, and all of the things from her harassment claims that stayed were all in there. So to me, the story was, why is this news service suddenly something that they called just a trimming before? They're now acting like is this huge victory for the Church of Scientology, and her lawsuit's barely hanging on. And I said to myself, I looked at the rule, I said, that's not true. So that was, sometimes, Chris, I know I get criticized for it sometimes. Sometimes I feel like the press is the story. And I just decided I need to write about this because I started to see some more stories popping up. They were all over the place. Some of the people were saying, some news organizations were saying, some of it got cut, but most of her lawsuits there. Others were saying this is a devastating loss. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to explain to people exactly what is in there.
Yeah.
So, all of the major causes of action are still there. She still gets the opportunity to go into court and prove that Scientology's harassed her, stalked her, messed with her business contracts. All the stuff she wanted to get into court about, they're still on the table. What the judge cut was that on the defamation claims, of course, Leah's putting everything in there, all the awful things they've said about her.
Yep.
But some of them were more than a year old when the lawsuit was filed. Some of them are whatever the deadline was, 1 or 2 years, whatever. Some of them were from previous times. She tried to make the argument, yeah, but they get retweeted all the time, so they should be, they should, get new deadlines. Others were just, the problem was, they're equating her with Hitler. They're calling her a bigot. They're saying she's a rape apologist, and the judge is like, I'm sorry, those are opinions. You can't sue somebody over calling you names. And the judge said multiple times, I know the church looks terrible here. This is an awful thing that they're doing, but you can't sue over that. So But see, Chris, we knew this a month ago.
That's right.
So that's the thing is the ruling came in. It was what we had seen before. The thing that shocked me were these news organizations that were acting like, "Oh, this is a huge victory for Scientology. Leah's lawsuit's in real trouble." It's true. Yeah, she threw everything in there, and some of it got taken out. But the lawsuit is still a strong lawsuit, and she's going to get a chance to prove that Scientology is doing these horrible things. Believe me, David Miscavige is not happy that these causes of action all got through.
And he's still named in this thing.
And he accepted service. So, and another, see, this is one of the things that got lost with these news organizations, like not understanding. It was actually a big victory for Leah, for example, that RTC is still in. Remember, RTC trying to get out of this thing. That's and right. Mike Rinder and Claire Handley wrote these great declarations. And the judge said, yeah, you can keep RTC in. That's the real message here. She's still on target here.
Yeah. I'm going to throw this out there, purely suppositional, but just given the flavor of the reporting, I'm wondering if Karen Powell didn't call these people. I got a story for you, right? And slant it from the beginning. I just suppositional.
Look, and I didn't name the reporter the Courthouse News Service story because I like him, and I have a feeling it was editors that probably weren't that familiar with the story, and all these claims that got gutted. They just don't, they don't know the ins and outs of it, and they haven't been watching it for a long time. So I don't ever want to blame the writer and that's another thing. Sometimes I've seen some people get angry at me at my headlines in the Daily Beast or Rolling Stone. The editors write the headlines, not the writer.
True.
Now, if it's at my Substack, I'll own it. I write the headlines at my Substack, but if it's in, so I didn't want to blame the writer because who knows what he actually submitted. But the headline that came out, and then also like they allowed Corinne Powell to say, "Oh, we're entitled to legal fees." That's not what the ruling says. What the ruling says is that it's a mixed ruling. He granted some things that Scientology wanted. He denied other things, and because it's a mixed ruling, he says you can file for attorney's fees. Both sides can apply, but I don't know that anybody's entitled to any, which seemed to me like a pretty, I don't know. It just seemed to me the judge saying, "Look, don't bother."
Right. Exactly.
Let's just move on. Let's just get on with this lawsuit. There'll be plenty of money at risk later on. So anyway.
Yeah, I get that. Totally get that. Well, it is absolutely a cautionary tale, right? And don't necessarily believe the first thing you read, right? Sometimes we need all the facts to come out. So, and I'm really glad you broke all that down that way because I was kind of like, wait a minute, what? And then your story came out and I was like, oh, okay, got it. Right. So that was very helpful. So thank you. Okay, now this was interesting because talk about a little bit of an overreaction on this one. I've seen some stuff on social media. The new Long Island building Scientology just purchased. What's the actual story here?
Right. So, I mean, I don't blame people for being a little bit, panicked a little bit like, what's going on? Scientology spends $15.2 million for this big empty office complex on Long Island. That's scary. What's going on? But of course, those of us that have been watching this Ideal Org program all these years know, okay, that's the next step. They have these silly parties and raise money. And yeah, Long Island, Hawaii, Albuquerque, Battle Creek, Michigan, Puerto Rico. I'm trying to think. That's the next level. Now that they've opened Ideal Orgs in Austin, Mexico City, and Chicago, and Paris is, presumably is coming soon. The next wave are going to be this set that I just mentioned, and they've been raising money for years. And just as an example, I put up, a couple of years ago, the Long Island folks had a Great Gatsby party to raise money, and all these wealthy Scientologists, whatever, giving money. And so, this is part of that process. They've now put down $15 million for this big building that who knows how many years from now will become an Ideal Org, and Dave will come out there and they'll have their little grand opening. But we've seen it time and time again, Chris. These things, he has these grand openings. They make a lot of fuss about it, and then they just go empty. They're not having the effect that Dave tells his followers that they will.
That's right. That's exactly right. In fact, I love the follow-up shot of Chicago. It's just a great big empty building. It's all that's going on here, guys. Just empty buildings opening up all over. Long Island, Albuquerque. These are the bottom of the barrel in terms of Scientology. By the way, I got to tell you guys. I mean, just from having years of experience managing these levels of Scientology organizations, we're talking 3-4 staff members. We're talking 10 Scientologists in Albuquerque. I mean, this is why it's taken them 20 years plus, and they still haven't, secured the building, because there's just nobody there to pay for it, and they got to rely on funds from external to that city to get it. And we see in the decades that this has taken, that we can talk about Scientology and its coffers of money, but it's not like it's using that money for, its own improvement. They just keep hounding the few people who are in these areas for money. They just keep pounding on them for decades, rather than bring some little tiny 0.003% of their coffers out to pay for the buildings, right? So it kind of tells you what this is really all about. It's all about sucking up money for Scientology. That's it. That's it. So, yeah. All right. And finally, really good news, and I'm talking really good news now out of the UK. What's the story here?
Alex told us about this on our group therapy blog, the subscribers at Substack, that, he approached this reporter at The Guardian months ago and started talking to her about Narconon, and she got really interested, and she did a really in-depth investigation where they showed that the UK Narconon is really unregulated. It's getting complaints that aren't being looked into. It was still being recommended by the National Health Service on its website.
Wow.
And now that the Guardian has really put a spotlight on it, these agencies are scrambling. There's been investigations announced. Yeah, I mean, it's a really positive new development. And I don't think that Narconon's doing much business anyway.
Right.
This could be a really vulnerable thing for the Church of Scientology in the UK. And what's really exciting is that Alex Barnes Ross is making a few calls and keeping up the drumbeat, and he's really getting results. I think over there in England, there was kind of a passivity that because the press loves Scientology stories over there.
Yeah.
But I don't think the government was thinking about it. And now, they've got this guy in their faces that's like, well, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And he's really having a big effect. So I've been really happy that he's been sharing some of that with us. I know he's
Yeah.
been talking to you too, and helping out at the bunker. So very exciting, because remember, he's also got that MP, Diane Abbott, who's pushing the financial part of the government to look into Scientology. And now I was just talking to some people that were telling me that she's got a shot at becoming the Labor prime minister.
Damn.
I mean,
Damn.
I don't know British politics very well, and I may be
Yeah.
completely off on that, but they were saying there's a way that she could become a whip again in the Labor Party, and then she could be put up for prime minister election, and who knows, maybe she get it. But that would be something if you had a prime minister who's on the record saying, yeah, Scientology is guilty of financial shenanigans, which she
That's
has
right.
already said. So yeah, things are not looking great for Scientology in England right now.
Yeah, big time. And it's really been, just months of work on Alex's part and drumming up support and organizing things. It's not all just Alex. Alex is bringing in help. Alex is making things happen. And he's really doing the work, and he's worth supporting for what he is pulling off over there. It's not just hot air. And the UK is different from the US. They really are. And this is one of the it might, there's so many similarities that we kind of go, oh yeah, no, they're just like our, mini me's or something from over here. And that's such a wrong attitude. It's so different there. And so it really can, because of their sort of, I don't want to overgeneralize, but British society, the politeness, the sort of social veneer, you start poking at that over there, and they get really shaken up really fast. It's different from it is over here, where people almost welcome controversy and this kind of thing. It's not like that there. So, So anyway, I'm definitely here for it and helping him with that. So more power to you, Alex. Keep going. All right, and on that, we will wrap up on the stories for this week. Did you have any preview of coming events?
This week, Wednesday, will be a hearing in the Bixler lawsuit. That's the one that's Danny Masterson's victims who actually sued him in Scientology in 2019 before he was even charged criminally. They have a big hearing on Wednesday about this new amended complaint they want the court to accept, which adds a plaintiff, the actress Trisha Vesey, who testified in the first criminal trial, and they also want to add racketeering charges against the Church of Scientology. So, and Judge Upendra Kalra already has Scientology's motion to strike anti-slaps to rule on. So a lot's piling up on that in that lawsuit this week, and it's going to be interesting to see whether he makes some rulings on that, whether he rules on allowing the new lawsuit in. Big week for that lawsuit, so we're going to be watching that.
Excellent. Excellent. All right. Well, stay tuned, folks. In fact, the address for Tony's Substack is right there on the screen. Make sure that you subscribe to that and get your daily notifications, just like I do. And of course, subscribe to this channel. And on that happy note, we will see you guys next week. All right. Bye-bye.